What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of the Fanboys Anonymous meeting, roundtable discussion, whatever the hell you want to call it, podcast. I guess we're calling it meetings. That kind of makes
Meeting
sense.
of the minds. The minds.
So I guess this meeting is come to order or whatever. I am your host, Tony Mango, and I am a fanboy. Joining me this week, we've got Michael Burhan.
I know everything about Spider-Man.
We've got Nick Abrams.
I am Michael Burhan.
We've got Sam Lassio.
I am not Michael Burhan.
That's right. We've got Sam's girlfriend, Nikki Mills.
I don't even know what to say. Yeah, sure.
She is also Michael Burhan.
It's so hot.
And we might possibly have a friend of ours, Ronnie Brown, join later, and we might also have Sean Mitchell join later, but he's running
Depends if
a
he's
little late.
intoxicated or not.
Yeah, he's running a little late, so I don't know.
He's drinking his lunch.
It'll happen or something. What we're going to do this week is, this month, because this isn't a weekly podcast, we're going to try to break this up into like 15, 20-minute segments and everything, just because it's too much of a pain in the ass for me to edit an hour and a half video. So, at random, I'm going to be stopping, and it might be a little jarring transition and all that, but who cares? Nobody's really watching this anyway.
We speak the truth here.
Right. Today we were going to originally go and talk a little bit about recapping 2012 and recapping what we want to see in 2013. But the kind of New Year thing's already over with. It's the 8th that we're recording this, so fuck it. It's late enough into 2013. We don't need to do that. Let's talk about some Spider-Man.
Yeah, the original reason that this topic actually come to pass is because me and Nick and Sean were having an argument about Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man movie, on I Got Gameplay. Quick plug. So yeah, let's talk about the Amazing Spider-Man movie at first, because I want to get this out of the way as quick as possible. Now, I think the movie had a lot of flaws. Right? There's some stuff it did right, and I think, as me and Tony discussed this before, Andrew Garfield did make a good Spider-Man.
He was, as I should say, amazing as Spider-Man.
Oh.
You see what I did there? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Honestly.
Or should I say Spider-Man?
That's better. Now, as you said, he was amazing as Spider-Man, but there was a lot of flaws in this movie, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were rushing to get this film done. It looked like everything was going on fast forward. You know, they were killing people off. They didn't explain this. They didn't explain that. It was patchy in the middle. And there were things that they could do with it. There was a story that they could have told, but because they felt they've told it already, they just sort of just like, yeah, this is what we've got. Yeah, he's a cool emo geek. Let's throw it out there. Yeah. His Uncle Ben dies after yelling at him for a couple of sentences, and then everyone else starts dying for some weird reason.
That's the number one complaint that I have with the film, is that they took basically 2.5 of, well, I guess the content that you could fit in 2.5 films, and they tried to make it into one. And everything suffers because of that, because you can't build any of them if you don't have enough time to throw enough scenes out there, because there's really only like 3 or 4 scenes of Gwen and Peter together, and it's like, yeah. Okay, well, as far as the audience knows, they just basically met because they're introducing themselves and everything. Now, they obviously haven't if they're in a class together and all that, but you know, to the audience, they're just meeting. And then they're kind of like, oh, I kind of want to bang you. Yeah, I want to bang you too. Well, let's start going out, and now your dad's dead. Like, that's basically the whole thing. It's just like, it really, there's no chance to just kind of stop and smell the roses a little bit. And it happens with every character. It happens with...
the most cliche line in that film as well, though, where he goes, I'm keeping secrets. Oh, they're the best kind. No, don't make promises. They're the best kind.
Yeah. Oh, that was just ridiculous, because that just means he's an ass.
Right. So,
That just means instead of Peter being like a kind of a prick to villains, that means he's just a fucking jerk when it comes to everybody. Because he's like, look, I'm not gonna go to the funeral, but I'm gonna promise that I'm never gonna see you again, and then I'm gonna renege on that promise because I still want to hit that. But
It's like not supporting your fucking girlfriend while her dad has died.
Right.
Unknowing to her, he was there. Okay.
he's like, look, I want this funeral business to blow over, and then I'll call you. I'm Spider-Man. I have shit to do. I gotta pay attention to people making my logo perfectly on the side of a building.
Yeah.
That milk that I didn't get for half the movie.
What about half the movie?
That milk that you're supposed to get for half the movie.
No, the eggs.
Eggs.
Oh, the eggs. That was
Yeah,
it.
he got the milk, and then Uncle Ben died because of it.
Yeah.
That was fucking good chocolate milk, man.
Well, you know what would have been even better if that would have he would have dropped the milk when he saw him, and then it would have been like, "Why are you crying over spilled milk?"
No, awesome.
I had to go there.
Jesus
Brings the milk
Christ.
to his Aunt May, and she's like, "I've been dying for this milk all day."
If you want
Well,
to
look,
make an omelet, you got to break some eggs.
Tony, as far as you guys were saying about like the film being rushed and stuff, it felt like the people were kind of damned if they did and damned if they didn't. Because I mean, if you do the movie and you explain the origin and you put time into it, then people are gonna bitch. Oh, well, it's just like the one from '02. But then if you do rush it and you're like, look, everybody already knows the character, let's get to some story plot. Then you're like, oh, well, they're rushing it. They're not devoting time to it.
Okay, well, there's a film that did the same exact thing as you've got Batman Begins, and then you have Batman. Batman never had an origin story. It
Yeah.
sort of recapped on it, and then
Yeah.
just went along its business. Why couldn't they have done that with Amazing Spider-Man?
Right, because you already know. You already know
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah.
They could have
How it
Sheen in
comes.
flashbacks as Uncle Ben while he's progressing with his life. You don't need to add that in there. He doesn't have to be there. That story doesn't need to be told. It could be told as a backup in the film, in the ongoing story that's going on in the film. It's the subtext basically that runs alongside the ongoing story. You don't need to have that there.
Well,
And that's why-
you also have to think about the children who are just now experiencing Spider-Man for the first time. They don't know. I mean, sure, their parents could buy them the original trilogy, and they could watch that shit. But I mean, you do have to understand that those children don't know. So
Yeah,
I mean,
but,
I can understand why they would do it for their sake, but for the rest of us, we already freaking know. I mean, you
the
could have.
thing is though, Nick, sorry to cut you off there.
That's great.
With Batman, when I watched Batman, I never knew who Batman was until I actually saw the Michael Keaton film.
He's Bruce
believe it or not.
Wayne.
Oh my god.
Tony.
Tony, I'm going to sodomize you.
I'll watch.
I like this episode. I'm being an ass this time.
But do you know what I mean? And I never knew who he was. I was a stupid kid, so I didn't know who he was. And then I started reading the comics and immersing myself in it. You're not gonna, by saying, "Oh, there's people who don't know who Spider-Man is." There's a fucking cartoon going on called Ultimate Spider-Man. You have the comic books. You have
Okay.
everything. There's all this media out there in pop culture. There's people who don't even read the comics, who don't even know who Marvel is, know who Spider-Man is.
That's
See,
true.
I don't mind them having done an origin story. I mean, I was kind of hoping that they would redo it a little bit. What I had a problem with was they didn't need to do the origin story, and I'm trying to keep track of this too. Origin story, development of the powers, the lizard with Peter, the lizard with his parents, backstory of the parents, Peter with Uncle Ben, Peter with Aunt May, Peter with Gwen, Peter with Flash, the Dr. Rafa and
Norman
Lizard
Osborn.
storyline, the idea of Norman Osborn as this shadowy the Emperor kind of a thing from Star Wars. There's so many things on there. That's 11 plot points right there. And they could have and there's the Peter and Gwen's father. If I didn't say that already, that would be 12.
Captain
And-
Stacy, who dies in a rather gayish attempt
I
to
think
save Peter's life.
I think the better way of going about it would have been don't rush the Captain Stacy stuff. you can do that in part 2, and you can kill him off
even
in
in
part
part
2.
3, have it as an ongoing thing where he's trying to find out who the hell Spider-Man is. Because Spider-Man, when his first tenure as a superhero, no one liked him. And no one liked him up until now.
And I mean,
You
he
know what I
wasn't good at being Spider-Man at first. He would fuck up a lot.
Yeah, but that's what differentiated him from other heroes. He was human.
Yeah,
He never had like with the superpowers he had. He was learning. He was trying
right.
to
But
get through it.
like in the movie, they show him as like he goes from not doing anything to all of a sudden ordering this like the webbing, creating the thing in like 30 seconds of the film, and then he's got a complex costume that
Yeah,
like
all the montages that they did in this fucking thing.
Yeah.
There was like 15 montages.
You'd think that with the montages and the flashbacks, you would have built in the ability to skip over some of the plot points that we don't need and
Yeah.
focus more on the ones we do. Like, obviously, more time with Gwen and Peter together, more time with Gwen and Captain Stacy and all that. I really think, though, that they could have pushed the dark parts of it to part 2.
Yeah.
And because that's, I mean, the general rule of thumb in movies is part 2 is going to be the downer. Empire is the downer. Dark Knight's the downer. Well, all of Nolan's films are the downers.
Spider-Man 2 was Spidey No More.
Yeah, like they
Sam Raimi.
they kind of go that route. So it's not to say that that would be repetitive for the Spider-Man series. All films that are good do that. Godfather Part 2 does it too.
Yeah.
And
Batman
well,
Returns.
Terminator 2 doesn't because they didn't need a Part 3. It was awful. But like there's that rule of thumb, and they could have done that to where you keep Captain Stacy alive in this movie, and then you don't have to rush his death, and you don't have to rush the relationship with Gwen and Peter, and you don't have to rush all the storylines like that. But I did like overall the movie. Like I think it was an enjoyable version of it. I don't think it's as good of a film as Raimi's first film, but I think Raimi screwed the pooch on part 2 and really royally fucked up part 3. I've been saying for the longest time, part 2, if you keep part 1 the way that Raimi did it, perfect for the most part, except for Kirsten Dunst. Part 2 should have been...
Everyone keeps saying that about Kirsten Dunst, how she was shit.
Yeah.
She was shit.
But I think part 2, instead of going Doc Ock and Spider-Man No More and all that, you go Spider-Man being hunted by Kraven, and you introduce Lizard, and Kraven starts hunting Lizard too. And the way that the rule of thumb, I keep saying that phrase, of those movies was that Spider-Man doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't kill Green Goblin, he kills himself. Doc Ock dies from self-sacrifice. Sandman fucking floats away or whatever.
Yeah.
And Harry dies from Venom, and Venom fucking kills himself.
Impaling him on his own glider, yeah.
But so the way they go about that is you have Lizard not get killed. Lizard gets redeemed by Peter through the Venom symbiote, and Kraven kills himself through one of his traps. Just a backfire trap kind of thing like that. Then part 3, you go into Venom.
You don't have to kill the villains off.
I
Why
think
are
that
they
you
killing...
should.
Why? What's the point?
Not always.
I've always thought of like if you don't kill the villains off, then by the third film you can actually have a gang of villains.
Yeah, but they could have done
like
that
Sinister
anyway.
Six.
They have
Sinister
more than...
Six, exactly, yeah.
But they have more than enough. You don't need Kraven in there. You got Doc Ock, Electro, Rhino, Scorpion, Shocker.
Introduce them early, but you don't kill them, then you can set up the Sinister Six by having new villains in the third one, but then see old ones from 1 and 2 come back, and they all form the Sinister Six.
That could be like the epic climax to the whole Spider-Man universe, like if Raimi was doing that way. It's like his swan song, so to speak. Have like the unstoppable thing. It's like what they did with Dark Knight Rises, where they had this unstoppable menace in Bane, and that was Batman's swan song. They could have had the same thing with Spidey, and have like the Sinister Six come at him and literally destroying every little aspect of his life. Even have them, like Doc Ock, find out who he really is.
Yeah.
Well, I think that somebody is going to find out who Peter Parker is in the later films, because
They have to, yeah.
you think about it, he's ordering the webs from Oscorp. He's not making them himself. He's getting them delivered to his house. Like, how fucking stupid could you be?
And they're like, why wouldn't they have footage of Peter going into that room and getting bit by all the spiders? Like, if they have all this crazy security devices and all that, like that little keypad thing, you mean they don't have a security camera?
Right, right.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, this is actually a big complaint of mine. I mentioned it before, but in every superhero movie, I always look for, could this happen in the real world? And I think Batman Begins really was good for me in that regard. But one thing that's always bothered me with Spider-Man is how the fuck does Peter make his costume?
Right.
He's
I
like
mean,
17, 18 for the movies.
Well, originally in the comic books, the spider gives him the idea. It imprints the whole plan of the webbing, how he concocts it and stuff,
Yeah.
and it also imprints the design of the costume in his
I mean,
memory.
that's not the complaint. I mean, I'm not anybody, but you can design a costume. The actual, like, he had to sew
Sewing,
that together.
yeah.
He,
see,
there
one
was set up that, like, he was even good at sewing, and then he makes a complex Spider-Man costume.
well,
one thing that I've
kids
always
have home ec.
yeah. One thing that I've always wanted to do, and I've mentioned it to, friends of mine. I've never done it like on like a public forum or whatever, but I've always had these little notes of mine that I call superhero blueprints, where I kind of break down everything when it comes to Batman, Superman, and all that, and I try to make like, if you were to do as little stories as possible to do everything that you've seen in the comics, like for Batman, like maybe you would do one storyline of Mr. Freeze, and it's the main one with Nora, and that's it. And Mr. Freeze never pops up again. So it's kind of in the movie route, but it's like maybe there's 15 books instead of like 3 films or something. And the little thing that I always wrote down for Spider-Man when it comes to his costume is that early on in the story, there would be a bonding scene between Aunt May and Peter where she's knitting something or sewing something and he's just sitting there helping her out with it. So it kind of just implants that idea in your mind that, well, he must be doing this to help out Aunt May and he's good enough to do it. So, okay, well, that explains why he could build the costume.
Yeah.
Well, also in the cartoons though, when he's like trying to be a pro wrestler, they give him the costume. So they could have just done that, and then he just puts the bloody logo on the thing.
Right, right.
Right.
They did that in Ultimate Spider-Man as well.
Yeah. So they don't have to.
We're actually about 20 minutes into this, so I'm going to break this up a little bit. I don't know how many parts we're going to end up doing because we're just kind of getting started. But we'll see. If it's, I don't know, fucking 10 parts, it's going to take me forever, but oh well. So part 2 will be coming up after this. It's not going to be just one part, that's for sure. And we'll pick up right up with the rest of the talk about the suit and move on to other topics.